Hello and welcome to part 3 from Golf Game Course. In this part, we will create a reset function to reset the thrown golf ball to its last location, a teleport function to teleport the player to the ball when it's not moving. Pretty wonderful, let's get started. What we want to do right now is to be able to throw the ball out of the map and to be able to reset it. But we want to be able to reset it to the last location only if the last location is in the ground, not in the air. First of all, in order for our ball to fall down, we don't need this infinite floor physics. We'll make it convex mesh here instead of plane, and we'll choose our landscape. This is our landscape mesh here. And we want copy this scale and put it here and rotate it like this. So now our ball can fall down because there is no physics here anymore and the physics only exists here. Also, we don't want it to infinitely go down. We will do a little trick here. We will duplicate another physics here and call it boundaries physics. And this time this one will be plane, the infinite one, 90 degree, and we will put it down in the map. So when our ball collides with it, we will call an event to reset its location to the last still location. In our ball, this is our ball component. This one, collision with hole. The one we'll be creating is collision with boundaries. If we'll just go copy this one. This time, it's not the hole, it's boundaries physics. This one, this name, we can just copy paste it if you want. If the other object name equals boundaries physics, we will console log touch boundaries so that we know that we touched it. If we have this ball here and it falls down, it will console log touch boundaries. Now we want to get the last location where the ball wasn't moving. So how to do that? By simply initialize this location, last ball static location equals vector3. We want to initialize it to become a vector3, and we'll create a new function called isStill. If this rigid body, the physics body that we have, linear velocity equals 0, then it's not moving. On update, console log, I want to show you the linear velocity. So you see, it's 0. Why? The ball is not moving. But if the ball was moving, for example, we'll get the ball, we'll put it here, so it will fall down. It's on the air right now. You see it's moving. The velocity of it is, it's moving. And it will keep on moving until it stops and becomes 0 again. So right now it's not moving. It stopped moving. And you see, it's 1, 2, 3. So we want to get the first one. We start from 0. We don't start from 1. We start from 0. If 0 equal 0 and the 1 equals 0, 2, and the final one also equals 0, if all of the 3 equals 0, then we will simply turn true. Still will be true. Else, we will return false. And we will ask here if this is still, and it will return true or false based whether it's moving or not. If it's still, then this object get position word, and we will put it in the last ball static location, the one that we have just initialized. And if the ball touched the boundaries, we want this object, the ball object, to set the position words based on the last ball static location that we have here. So when the ball touches the boundaries physics, it will change its location to the last ball static location that it was set here when the ball was still. And of course, like we've said before, we want this rigid body kinematic to be true in order to be able to move the ball with physics. So let's test it in VR. See, this ball is still, so it saved its location, and when we throw it, see, it gets thrown down. Then when it touched it, it comes back here because it's touched the boundaries, so it gets reset to the last still location. And if we moved right now, we can touch it again. Why? Because it's kinematic. So in order to fix that, we will do this rigid body kinematic equals false. We will make it false. But we want to enable it in a little bit delay for it to have its time while it's being kinematic true and gets teleported, and then we set the kinematic back to false. So how we set the delay, we set time out and we put our function here and we want it 100 milliseconds. If we put another 0 here, it will be 1 second, but we want it 100 milliseconds, less than 1 second. If we go back to the game, see, it falls down, then it gets reset once it touches the boundary, and we can touch it again. See, again, perfect. And when we move it a little bit, this will be in the new still location. Now what we want to do is to teleport to the ball if it's in the ground. Why? Because like now, sometimes we throw the ball very far away and we want to know its location, but we can't find it. So what we want to do is to teleport the player to the ball if the ball is in the ground. So how to do that? First, we will create a new component called player, and we will put it in the player object. And here's the thing. See this ball? we will create another empty child from this ball and we will call it player teleport location. We will set it like this. So we want the player to always teleport to this location near the ball and maybe like get it here so that we can always face the ball. So like always, we want this one to be player teleport location and we don't want it to be float. We want it to be object. We'll go here to the player and we'll find that it's object. We will reference it and done. We have it. We don't need the initialize here and we'll go with the start and we don't need the update here. This is another function block that you can just copy and paste. You don't have to memorize it. We want to know when player presses start on his VR headset. And so this one, you don't have to memorize it. So just copy and paste it. When the player presses select, select pressed will be called select pressed function. And this is the select pressed function. We'll create it and now we have it. And this code is simply this engine. We reference the engine on XR session start. We add event listener select start. So when the player presses the select button, which is also known as the trigger button, this function will be called. You don't need to fully understand it, just like copy and paste it. And the most important part that you need to know is that it calls this function on select start. So what we want right now, when the player presses select, we want to teleport to ball if it's still, because we don't want the player to teleport to the ball while it's on the air, for example. So we want it if it's still, which means it's on the ground. How to do that? We have a function here, if you remember, in the ball component called still. So we want to reference it. How to reference it? We need to reference the ball component at first. Ball property object, we reference our ball, and then from the ball we want to get this component, the ball component that we have created. So if this ball will get components and this component will be called ball, this component, and you can call it ball from the name that you find here, or you can call it from this class, export class. You can call it like this too. It's exactly the same, but to be able to call this one, you just need to import this class, this time from .ball. It's our JavaScript application we find here. This is ball. So whatever works best for you. Ball and ball is the same. Now we reference that and we want to call this function to return true if it's not moving and return false if it's still moving. Now, is still, we want to change the location of the player. If it's still, we want to get the player teleport location, this one, the player teleport location, we want to get its position in the world and we will set it to temp vector. We will initialize our temp vector here up. And we will set it to temp vector. And we will set this object, which is our player, we will set its position, the word, to this temp vector. We get it from the player teleport location and then we set it to our player object here. And we will do the same with rotation. This one, instead of position word, we want rotation word. Instead of temp vector, we want temp rotation. This time we want quad because rotation is quad with 4 numbers. And we will simply port them both from GL matrix. Now we have them and we will call this one temp rotation. We have it here, so we will set our player object rotation. Okay. We will set it to temp rotation that we've just created. Now, simply, if the player presses select, select pressed will be called and it will teleport to ball if it's still. And we go, if this ball is still, if it's true, then we will get the player teleport location and we will put it in a temp vector. And then we will get this object and we'll set its position word to this temp vector. And we'll do the same with the rotation. Let's test that. Actually, it will not work. I will show you why exactly. So if we throw the ball, now if we press start, a terrible thing will happen. I will show you. See, I'm totally messed up in the rotation. Why? Because the ball is rotating too. And so our player teleport is rotating with it too. So if we have temp mesh here, for example, if this is rotating, you see that player teleport location is rotating too. And of course, it's messed up. So what we want is the ball to be rotating only in the Y direction here. So how to do that? We'll go to the physics and we will go down. We will limit the X angular movement and the Z angular movement. So the ball is now rotating only in this direction. And the player will be rotating only on this box. We'll remove our test mesh and then we will start again. And you see right now it only rotates in one direction. And when now it's stopped, so I press select and you see perfect. So it stops, I press it, goes here. When I press I can't do anything, but now it stopped, so when I press it goes perfect.